And so that's why I want to go over to the book of John, because over there it tells. So let me ask you that. So there's these different books in the New Testament, and the first four books, which are referred to as the Gospels, right?
Right.
Really all kind of seem to tell the same story over and over and over again.
Right.
Why is that? Why is that in here? Why does
Well,
it
because
repeat itself?
there were different authors of the. This is what makes this book so powerful. You have different authors at different times, at different parts of the country, that all wrote, not knowing each other, not knowing all these, but all of them wrote from a different perspective, but yet all of them tie in together for the same purpose and the same stories. Some of it may be a little bit different. They may use different terms sometimes in their story writing, but the same way would be with you and me, right?
So what you're saying is we've got these four witnesses: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Right.
Right.
And what's most important?
And they're witnesses to what
Witnesses.
This guy, Jesus, who we believe to be Lord,
Right.
and that we're telling time by,
Right.
walked this earth 2,021 years ago.
Right.
They're telling their eyewitness stories. Each one is a little different, but they all show veracity, right? Truthfulness in what
Right.
occurred. That sounds to me like when an officer's on a scene and they start
There you
canvassing the
go.
neighborhood and talking to various witnesses. Every witness isn't going to tell the exact same thing because they're telling it from their perspective.
Right.
Right?
But if they're good witnesses and all telling the truth, there will be elements of their testimony that will absolutely dovetail together, right? That will be you.
So a good detective takes those different perspectives and shows the commonality that they identified through
There you
those
go.
interviews, right? And also the differences. And if somebody isn't telling the truth, you've got four people saying this, and this fifth person saying something that's not only a little different, but is radically the opposite of what these are saying.
Right.
You can also separate out those other,
There you go.
those unfactual, non-factual things. I guess my point in that is, especially when you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, I read this book, and the very second book is a lot the same, just a little different. The key point in here is that it not only points to the truth, but this has been so tested that it's also been able to be verified that it is not it's lacking error or untruthfulness or just a made up story.
Literally, this is the most scrutinized book in the world.
Right. You mentioned that in the last one. You said it was the most scrutinized manuscript that is out there.
That is correct.
That's saying beyond just looking at it from just a purely religious document.
Right. And it is the least errored book in the or manuscript in the entire world.
That should carry a lot of weight with an
That should,
officer.
I would think it would. I would think it would.
So we go over here to
But again, trust, but
verify.
verify.
That's right.
Just
so
verify.
we're doing that. We go over to John 4. So we go to the book of John, the 4th chapter.
So that's Matthew. We were in Matthew, Mark,
Right.
Luke,
And then John.
And if you go to the top of your Bible, this is an easy way to do this.
Okay.
Okay. If you go to the top of your Bible and you look, you'll see the name on the names on both the left and the right margin at the top.
And that's the name of the book.
Name of the book. And you can take your thumb, bend the pages, and kind of flip. And your eye, as you do this, especially over time, Matthew, Mark, Luke, see there's Luke, and then
John. Now you flip to where chapter 5 starts, or 4 starts,
and then
right?
you flip over, you'll see the big number at the beginning of the chapter. Now, the Bible wasn't written in chapter or verse.
Right.
The Bible was written in letter form, or just like if you were writing your journal out, right? But then in order for you and I to understand and memorize and get to know and find scriptures easy, then the numbers of the chapters and the numbers of the verses were added. Sometimes that's great for finding something, But always make sure that you read 3 verses below and 3 verses above to make sure that you stay in context of any verse.
So it's funny you say that, because I find myself always having to remind folks of that in law enforcement and in public discussions about law enforcement activities. I use this phrase a lot, right? Context before content, right? Rather than driving right in and pulling out that singular verse and trying to make that verse speak to whatever the issue is you're talking about, identify what the context is that verse is within, which is what you're saying, 3 before, 3 after. Get the context for it before you really drill into what the true content is.
So you keep rolling back 3 verses or rolling forward 3 verses if you still don't get the content. Because sometimes it takes a whole chapter.
Might take a whole chapter
to bring whatever you read into context. Yeah.
Well, and quite honestly, not to belabor the point, but there's also times where you're reading a verse in the New Testament and you need the context of the Old Testament to understand what it is saying.
Right. So your Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, in other words, hidden,
right.
But it's there. There's a common thread through the whole. The New Testament is the Old Testament revealed, remnant revealed. It's the Old Testament opens up in the New Testament, plus the New Testament was written, like we just got through reading Matthew. Matthew, in his writings, he commented and mentioned the he was trying to help his fellow Jewish leaders to realize, and the Christians that were coming in to realize, how many verses of the Old Testament pointed towards what he was sharing. So if you read Matthew, you'll find he quoted the Old Testament a lot to say, as it was written in Isaiah, as it was written in Jeremiah, as it was written in these books. He kept pointing back.
Context before content.
Context before content. Pointing back to the Old Testament so they would know this is why we now believe Jesus the Christ is God in the flesh, the Son of the living God. He is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords we've been waiting on, the Messiah.
So there's this thread, this remnant, if you will, that's woven throughout the Old Testament that then becomes fully revealed in the New Testament.
Exactly.
It's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah,
all right,
awesome.
So John chapter 4, and really picks up in verse 43, is this story again of Jesus. In my translation, it says Jesus healing an official's son. And it retells that story, but then it adds some additional to the story, picking up in verse 51. And it's still talking about the captain, the soldier, and it says, while he was on, this is from the New Living Translation, it says, while he was on his way, some of his servants, let's just say some of his officers under his command, met him with the news that his son, that patrol officer, was alive and well. So that's confirming what he had put his faith in Jesus being able to do earlier on in these verses up above. And then it says, but he asked them when he had begun to feel better, and they replied, yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock his fever suddenly disappeared. Now, in Jewish tradition, if I understand this correctly, Chaplain, when you're talking about time, 1 o'clock could also be 7, because in the Jewish Hebrew tradition, the start of the day was 6, right? So when it says 1 o'clock, that could also be 7.
Right.
The point being
first hour of the day.
Yeah. But the point being is that he trusted that Jesus could do what he said he was going to do. That was his faith. His faith is what actually unlocked or provided the ability for the healing to occur, right? But then he took this additional step and he said, well, when did this happen? And they say the time, and it says, then he realized it was the same time that Jesus had told him, your son will live. And the officer and his entire household believed in Jesus. Now, what that tells me is that the captain trusted in the Lord, trusted that he could heal his officer, his servant, his son. And then when he got word that it occurred, he then verified that it occurred at the exact same time when Jesus said he was healed.
Right.
That is the trust, but verify that this officer, this captain, any good officer does, and in doing so, he actually used his faith in the beginning, had the verification, and then it goes on to say that he and his entire household believed in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's powerful, man.
That is powerful. That'd touch your whole house.
That's one of the greatest cop stories I've heard.
That's a good one.
That's way better than anything
Yeah.
you see on TV.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Rick and I trust that you heard something that will help your life. And if you believe that it would help others, please make sure and share. Like and subscribe and hit that bell so that you can be notified when the next podcast is available. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.